The clock struck midnight, its chime echoing through the old house like a sinister warning. Claire sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the empty space beside her. Tom, her husband, was away on business, leaving her alone with their two children, Nia and Jake, who were sound asleep down the hall. The silence of the house felt oppressive, each creak of the floorboards amplified in the stillness. As she wrapped herself in a blanket, a shiver ran down her spine. It wasn't just the cold, it was a feeling of being watched, an unseen presence lurking in the shadows. The air felt heavy, thick with an energy that made her skin crawl. She closed her eyes, trying to dispel the anxiety that crept in, but it clung to her like a second skin. Deciding to shake off her unease, Claire made her way to the bathroom. As she approached, a foul stench curled out from under the door, sharp and acrid. "What is that?" she muttered, pinching her nose as she opened the door. The flickering light overhead cast eerie shadows, and the air inside was thick with mildew and decay. The moment she stepped in, a chilling voice slithered through the darkness, freezing her in place. "Help me." Claire's heart raced, her breath hitching in her throat. "Who's there?" she called, her voice trembling, echoing back to her in the dim room. Silence enveloped her, but the stench intensified, curling around her like a suffocating fog. She took a cautious step back, feeling an icy breeze sweep through the room, sending chills cascading down her spine. The voice returned, more insistent, a low growl that reverberated in the air. "Help me, please." Her breath quickened as terror clawed at her throat. "What do you want?" she demanded, though part of her wished she hadn't asked. "Beneath the floor, help me," the words twisted around her, filled with despair and rage, leaving a lingering chill in the air. Claire's pulse quickened, adrenaline flooding her veins. She turned to leave, but found herself rooted to the spot, caught in an invisible grip. The air felt charged, oppressive, thick with malevolence. "Why are you trapped?" she whispered, her heart pounding against her ribcage. "Help me," the voice now took on an almost pleading tone, seeping into her mind and wrapping around her thoughts like a vine. Driven by a mix of fear and morbid curiosity, Claire knelt beside the toilet, peering down into the darkness. "What are you?" she asked, her voice trembling. Beneath the floor it echoed, its tone shifting from desperate to sinister. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, plunging the room into darkness. Claire's heart raced, and she stumbled backward, colliding with the bathroom wall. Panic set in, her instinct screaming at her to escape. "I can't do this," she gasped, rushing out of the bathroom and slamming the door behind her. She dashed to the kitchen, splashing cold water on her face, but her mind raced with thoughts of the voice. "It's just the plumbing," she muttered to herself, trying to convince her fraying sanity. But doubt gnawed at her. Determined to confront the terror, Claire returned to the bathroom, taking a deep breath. She gripped the doorknob, hesitating for a moment before stepping inside. The air was thick with a suffocating energy, and the flickering light seemed to dance menacingly. "Who are you?" she called into the darkness, her voice trembling as she approached the toilet. Beneath the floor, the voice echoed, more urgent now, filled with anguish. Feeling a surge of adrenaline, Claire knelt down, her hand shaking as she felt around the base. The floorboards felt cold, damp with moisture and age. "What do you want from me?" she demanded, desperation creeping into her voice. "Help me," the voice was now laced with rage, vibrating through the walls, drowning her in dread. A chill enveloped her as the room darkened further, shadows creeping toward her like hungry beasts. "Why should I help you?" Claire shouted, fear boiling over. "You could be lying. Stay and suffer," the voice hissed, its tone dripping with malice, curling into her thoughts like smoke. Overwhelmed by fear, Claire felt tears prick at her eyes. Yet, the sorrow in the voice tugged at her heart. "Fine, I'll help you," she said, her voice barely a whisper against the growing darkness. A flicker of hope passed through her, and she sensed the presence retreat slightly. "Thank you," it breathed, a sinister undertone lingering in the air. With shaky hands, Claire grabbed a small shovel from the shed, the metal cold against her palm. She stepped outside into the cool night, the moon casting a silvery glow over the yard. As she dug into the soft earth, unease settled over her, the night feeling alive with a palpable tension. Each scoop of dirt felt heavier than the last, and with every thrust of the shovel, she could hear the echoes of the voice, the plea intensifying in her mind. "Beneath the floor, my locket, please." After several frantic minutes, Claire hit something solid. Her heart raced as she knelt down, uncovering a small, rusted locket. She brushed the dirt away, revealing its tarnished surface, and opened it cautiously. Inside was a faded photograph of the old woman, her eyes hauntingly hollow. Suddenly, a bone-chilling wind whipped through the yard, and the temperature plummeted. Shadows twisted and writhed around her, an unnatural presence rising from the earth. "What do you want from me?" she cried, panic clawing at her throat. "Bury it where you found me," the voice implored, echoing with urgency, filled with an insatiable longing. With trembling hands, Claire placed the locket back in the hole, her heart racing as she covered it with soil. The ground trembled beneath her, and a dark shadow loomed closer, an evil force coiling around her, threatening to pull her into its depths. "Rest now," she whispered, her voice thick with dread. "You're free." As she stood, the air crackled with energy, and the darkness surged, a violent force pressing against her. Claire stumbled back, her heart pounding in her chest, and for a fleeting moment, she caught a glimpse of the old woman's tormented face. "Why did you do that?" the spirit screamed, her voice filled with fury, echoing through the trees and sending tremors of terror down Claire's spine. The ground beneath Claire's feet trembled violently, and she sprinted back toward the house, slamming the door shut behind her. She bolted to her children's room, heart racing as she shook them awake. "We have to go. Now, Mama," Jake mumbled, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "What's wrong?" "There is something in the house. We have to get out," Claire shouted, urgency lacing her voice, her own fear slipping into her tone. As she guided them down the hallway, the lights flickered ominously, and a freezing wind rushed past them, extinguishing the light. Shadows danced around the edges of the room, elongating and twisting into grotesque forms, more alive than ever. "Stay close," Claire commanded, gripping the children's hands tightly. The air was thick with malevolence, and she could feel a presence lurking just behind them, a darkness hungry for their fear. "Mom," Mia cried, her voice trembling. "I'm scared, me too, honey, but we have to keep moving," Claire urged, her heart racing as she led them toward the front door. The air was charged with darkness, every shadow seeming to pulse with an unholy energy, swirling around them like a tempest. Just as they reached the door, a bone-chilling laughter erupted from the shadows, filling the room with a sense of impending doom. "You can't escape, you belong to me now." Claire turned to see the old woman's spirit materializing, her face contorted with rage, eyes blazing with malevolence. "You disturbed my rest," she shrieked, her voice echoing through the walls, shaking the very foundation of the house. "Mama," Jake shouted, panic overtaking him as the shadows loomed closer. "Get back," Claire yelled, shoving the kids behind her as she faced the menacing specter. "You won't take my family." The old woman lunged forward, a spectral wail escaping her lips, filled with centuries of rage. "You cannot escape the past." "You are a meanie," as shadows closed in around Claire. She felt a surge of strength rising within her. "No," she shouted, channeling her will into a force of light. "I won't let you take him." In that moment, the air crackled with energy, the darkness recoiling as Claire's voice rang out like a bell of defiance. "You're free. Find peace." The old woman's form faltered, confusion flickering in her eyes. "No, you cannot." With a blinding flash, the darkness erupted, and the old woman's spirit dissipated into mist, her anguished scream fading into silence. Breathless and trembling, Claire collapsed onto the floor, her heart racing. She looked around to see the night air growing calm, the shadows receding. Mia and Jake rushed back to her, their eyes wide with fear and confusion. "Mom, what happened?" Mia cried, her voice trembling. "I don't know," Claire replied, shaking her head, trying to catch her breath. "But it's over now. I think she's gone." As they huddled together, Claire felt a heaviness lift from the house, an oppressive weight easing off her shoulders. The air felt lighter, the shadows no longer menacing, but she couldn't shake the feeling that they hadn't seen the last of the old woman. Days passed, and life returned to a semblance of normalcy. Tom came back home, his presence comforting. They settled into a routine, but Claire found herself frequently glancing over her shoulder, her instincts alert, the memory of that night haunting her. One night, after tucking the kids into bed, Claire decided to take a bath. As she filled the tub with warm water, she tried to relax, but the lingering dread gnawed at her. "It's just a memory," she told herself, trying to soothe her anxious thoughts. But as she sank into the water, a chill swept through the bathroom, and the familiar, foul odor wafted in. She shot up, heart racing, the warmth of the water forgotten. "Not again," she whispered, fear clawing at her. "Help me," the voice echoed, softer now, yet tinged with an unmistakable malice. Claire climbed out of the tub, her heart pounding. "I thought I helped you," she yelled, fury mixing with fear. "What more do ya want?" Beneath floor the voice echoed, filled with sorrow and rage, reverberating off the tiles. "I buried the locket," Claire shouted, panic rising in her throat. "I set you free." "Free," the voice sneered, thick with disdain. "You merely delayed the inevitable. My suffering is eternal. You cannot escape your fate." Claire grabbed a towel, wrapping it around herself as she stumbled out of the bathroom. "Get away from me," she screamed, her voice ringing through the house. "You're nothing but a memory?" "Memories are powerful," the voice retorted, its tone dripping with malice. "You cannot escape what you have awakened." Desperation clawed at her, and she ran to the children's room, flinging the door open. "Wake up, we have to go, Mama," Mia mumbled, confusion etched across her sleepy face. "What's wrong?" "The old woman is back," Claire shouted, her heart racing. "We need to leave. Right no." Jake bolted upright, fear washing over him. "What do you mean?" Terreno time to explain. "Just grab your things," Claire urged, her voice a frantic whisper, urgency thick in the air. As they scrambled to gather their belongings, the voice grew louder, filling the room with a sense of dread. "You cannot escape, Claire. I will follow you, wherever you go." "No," she shouted, rage igniting within her. "I won't let you." With trembling hands, she grabbed the children, ushering them down the hallway. But the shadows danced menacingly, closing in around them, and Claire felt a cold breath on the back of her neck. "Leave her," a voice hissed, deep and rumbling, reverberating through the walls. "Who's there?" Claire yelled, panic rising as she shielded her children with her body. The air crackled with energy, thick with anticipation. Suddenly, a bright light flickered in the darkness, revealing a figure emerging from the shadows, an old man, his face lined with age and wisdom. "We've come to help," he said, his voice steady and calm. "Who are you?" Claire asked, uncertainty flooding her. "What do ya want?" "I'm a guardian," he replied, stepping closer, his presence radiating warmth. "I have been watching over you and your family." The old woman is a remnant of pain and sorrow, trapped in the echoes of this house. "But I thought I freed her," Claire protested, confusion clouding her thoughts. "You have merely given her a chance to haunt you anew," the guardian explained, his eyes deep and knowing. "You must confront her spirit once more, but this time you have the strength to break the cycle." Fear and determination surged within Claire. "What do I need to do?" she asked, steeling herself. "Face her without fear," the guardian instructed, his voice firm. "Show her that she is not alone. Only then can you both find peace." With renewed resolve, Claire turned to the shadows. "I will not be afraid of you," she shouted, her voice steady. "You are nothing but a lost soul." The darkness coiled around her, but Claire felt a surge of power rising within her, bolstered by the guardian's presence. "You don't own me," she cried, pushing back against the shadows. "You will not take my family. Face me," the voice shrieked, filled with rage and desperation. "You can't escape." Claire stepped forward, determination in her heart. "I will help you find peace," she declared, her voice echoing through the room. "You are not alone. I know your pain. I will set you free." Suddenly, the shadows writhed violently, and the old woman's spirit materialized before her, eyes blazing with fury. "You cannot save me," she screamed, her voice filled with torment. "I can try," Claire shouted back, her voice ringing with defiance. "You are not a monster. You are a woman lost in sorrow. Let me help you," the old woman faltered, confusion flickering in her eyes. "You would help?" "Yes," Claire affirmed, stepping closer. "I know you have suffered, but holding onto your anger will not bring you peace. You must let it go." Fear thickened, and the shadows began to recede as the old woman hesitated. "I don't know how," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Let me show you," Claire urged, reaching out a hand. "Together, we can find your peace." The old woman's spirit hovered uncertainly, the rage in her eyes flickering. "But I am trapped in my grief lost." "You are not alone anymore," Claire said, her heart pounding. "You have the chance to break free. Let go of the pain, and I will help you find the light." With a cry, the old woman lunged forward, but this time, Claire held her ground. "No, you will not take me," Claire shouted, channeling her strength into a brilliant light that enveloped them both. As the light expanded, the shadows shrieked, retreating from the brilliance. The old woman's form shimmered, the fury in her eyes softening into sorrow. "I can't." "You can," Claire implored, her heart full of compassion. "Let the past go. Embrace the light." With a final, anguished cry, the old woman's spirit dissolved into the light, her rage transformed into peace. Claire felt the weight lift, the darkness dissipating as the guardian's presence grew stronger. "Thank you," a gentle voice echoed in the air, filled with gratitude and relief. "You have freed us both." Breathless, Claire watched as the shadows melted away, leaving the room bathed in a warm glow. The oppressive energy lifted, the air feeling fresh and alive. "Mama," MIA's voice broke through the silence, her eyes wide with awe. "Did you do it?" Claire knelt down, embracing her children tightly. "Yes, it's over now," she whispered, relief flooding her heart. "We're safe." The guardian smiled softly. "You have shown great courage, Claire. Remember, the light will always guide you." As the children clung to her, Claire felt a sense of peace wash over her, the echoes of the past fading into the background. The house was quiet once more, the darkness banished, and the shadows that once lurked in the corners had been transformed into something new, a sanctuary, a place of hope. And as she looked into her children's eyes, she knew they would be okay. The old woman was gone, freed from her sorrow, and Claire felt a sense of closure, her own fears dissolving into the night. Together, they stepped into the light of a new day, the memories of the haunting, lingering like a distant shadow, no longer a threat, but a testament to their strength.